If you're waking up 2, 3, or even 4 times every night to use the bathroom, you may think the answer is simply to drink less water. But for many people, the real issue may be when and how they're drinking it, and getting this wrong could be ruining your sleep night after night. Have you ever gone to bed feeling completely exhausted, expecting a peaceful night of sleep, only to find yourself awake at 1 or 2 in the morning with the familiar urge to use the bathroom? Then it happens again a few hours later. By morning, you may feel as though you spent more time walking through a dark hallway than actually sleeping. If you are over 60, you may have started believing this is simply part of getting older. You may even think the obvious answer is to drink less water. But what if the problem is not always how much water you drink? What if, for some people, the bigger issue is when they drink it and how they spread their fluids throughout the day? Many adults stay busy for hours, barely drinking anything during the morning or afternoon, then suddenly realize in the evening that they have had very little to drink. So they try to catch up before bed. Their body, however, still has to process those fluids while they are trying to sleep. But there is another important part of this story. Water is not always the only reason someone wakes up to urinate. Changes in sleep, bladder function, medications, and other health issues can also play a role. So the goal is not to become dehydrated because you are afraid of another bathroom trip. The goal is to understand what may be happening and make smarter choices. And once you understand why nighttime bathroom trips become more common after 60, your entire nightly routine may start to make much more sense. SECAN 2. Why nighttime bathroom trips become more common after 60. Waking up during the night to urinate is often called nocturia, a medical word that simply describes having to get out of bed to use the bathroom during your normal sleeping hours. Many adults notice this becomes more common as they grow older, but that does not mean every nighttime bathroom trip should automatically be blamed on age. Think of your urinary system as a simple storage and processing system. Your kidneys act like filters, helping your body manage fluids and produce urine, while your bladder acts like a storage tank. During a healthy night of sleep, your body generally slows urine production enough for the bladder to store urine comfortably until morning. But several things can change that pattern. As we age, the bladder may become more sensitive or may hold less comfortably than it once did. Sleep can also become lighter, making you easier to wake from small sounds, discomfort, temperature changes, or other disturbances. And here is something many people never consider. Sometimes you may wake up first for an entirely different reason, and only then notice that you could use the bathroom. In that situation, the bathroom trip did not necessarily cause the awakening. The awakening came first. Other factors may also contribute, including certain medications, swelling in the legs, sleep problems, urinary symptoms, and other health conditions. This is why simply removing 1 glass of water from your evening routine may not solve the problem for everyone. Still, there is one habit worth examining because many people repeat it without realizing how strongly it may affect their night. It involves the way they distribute their drinking throughout the entire day, and that pattern may begin creating nighttime problems long before they ever get into bed. SECAN 3. The late day hydration mistake many people make. Imagine a typical busy day. You wake up, eat breakfast, answer messages, run errands, work around the house, perhaps drink coffee, and keep moving from one task to another. Suddenly, it is late afternoon, and you realize something surprising. You have barely had any water all day. Wanting to do the healthy thing, you decide to correct the problem quickly. After dinner, while watching television, you drink a large glass of water. Then another. Perhaps you refill your bottle before going to bed because you have heard that drinking plenty of water is important. The intention is certainly good, but the timing may create a problem for some people. Your body cannot simply ignore a large amount of fluid because bedtime is approaching. Your kidneys continue doing their job, processing fluid and producing urine that eventually reaches the bladder. If much of your daily fluid intake is concentrated during the final hours before sleep, your bladder may be more likely to fill while you are trying to rest. Think of it like watering a plant. Giving it a reasonable amount regularly is different from forgetting about it all day and suddenly pouring everything on at once. A similar principle may apply to your drinking pattern. This does not mean everyone should follow one strict schedule or drink an identical amount. Fluid needs vary according to activity, weather, medications, diet, and medical conditions. But many people may benefit from asking whether they are unintentionally saving most of their fluids for the evening. And timing is only part of the story, because even when you drink at a reasonable time, the speed and amount you consume at once may still influence what happens later. SECAN 4. Mistake number 1. Drinking too much too quickly. Another common habit is drinking a large amount of fluid very quickly, especially later in the day. Perhaps you arrive home feeling thirsty and drink 2 large glasses within a few minutes. Or you finish dinner and immediately reach for a large bottle of water because you are trying to meet a personal hydration goal. Your body absolutely needs fluids, but drinking everything in a short period can be different from spreading your intake more evenly across the day. When a large amount of fluid enters your system quickly, your body begins processing it, and eventually more urine may reach the bladder. For someone already dealing with repeated nighttime bathroom trips, this pattern may increase the chance of needing to get up after going to bed. The important point is not that water is the enemy. Water is essential for normal body function. The question is whether your drinking pattern is working with your daily routine or creating unnecessary pressure close to bedtime. Rather than following extreme rules, many experts recommend paying attention to personal patterns. You may notice that drinking gradually during the morning and afternoon feels different from trying to catch up all at once during the evening. Small adjustments may help some people, while others may discover their nighttime symptoms have another cause entirely. But before assuming every fluid-related problem comes from your water glass, consider something important. Some of the fluids affecting your bladder may not even look like water when you consume them. Section 5. Hidden evening fluids, what counts more than you think. When people try to reduce nighttime bathroom trips, they often focus on only one thing, their final glass of water. But your body does not separate fluids based on whether they came from a glass labeled water. Tea, coffee, soft drinks, soups, and other beverages all contribute to your overall fluid intake. Even some foods contain significant amounts of water. That does not mean these foods are bad, or that you should become afraid of eating a healthy dinner. The point is awareness. Imagine someone saying, "I stopped drinking water after dinner, but I still wake up twice every night." Then you look more closely at their evening routine and discover they had a large bowl of soup, 2 cups of tea, and another beverage while watching television. From the body's perspective, that can still represent a meaningful amount of fluid. Caffeine can also affect some people differently and may contribute to bladder urgency or lighter sleep in sensitive individuals. The biggest surprise may be that the problem is not always the final drink before bed. Sometimes it is the total pattern created throughout the entire evening. A simple observation can be useful. For several days, notice what you drink, roughly when you drink it, and how often you wake during the night. You may begin seeing patterns that were previously invisible. But there is one popular piece of advice that often appears whenever this subject comes up, and following that advice too aggressively can create an entirely different health problem. Section 6. Myth versus fact, just stop drinking water after dinner. You may have heard someone say, if you keep waking up at night, simply stop drinking water after dinner. It sounds simple, and for some people, reducing unnecessary large drinks close to bedtime may indeed help. But turning that advice into a strict rule for everyone can be misleading. Your body still needs adequate hydration, and deliberately avoiding fluids for many hours, simply because you are afraid of waking up, may not be the healthiest solution. Some adults over 60 may be particularly vulnerable to inadequate hydration, and individual fluid needs can vary considerably. Certain medications and health conditions can also affect how much fluid is appropriate for a particular person. This is why there is no single magical cutoff time that works perfectly for everyone. The better question is not, what time should every person stop drinking? Instead, ask yourself, am I drinking most of my fluids at a time that may be interfering with my sleep? That difference matters. If you have spent the entire day drinking very little and then suddenly restrict yourself further because bedtime is approaching, you may be solving one problem by creating another. A more balanced approach is to look at your entire day. Spread fluids sensibly, pay attention to thirst, consider your personal medical needs, and discuss individualized recommendations with a healthcare professional when appropriate. The goal is not to drink as little as possible. The goal is to develop a healthier pattern. So what might that pattern actually look like from morning until bedtime, especially for someone trying to sleep more comfortably without becoming dehydrated? Section 7. A smarter daily drinking pattern after 60. A smarter hydration pattern often begins with something surprisingly simple. Stop treating water as something you need to catch up on at night. Instead, think about your fluid intake as part of the entire day. After waking, begin your morning normally and pay attention to your body's need for fluids. Continue drinking reasonably throughout the morning and afternoon rather than allowing many hours to pass without anything to drink. This does not mean forcing yourself to constantly drink water or following an identical amount every day. Your needs can change depending on your activity level, the weather, your diet, medications, and your personal health. But if you regularly reach the evening feeling extremely thirsty because you have barely had anything all day, that pattern may be worth reconsidering. Imagine two people who consume roughly the same amount of fluid during one day. The first person drinks gradually from morning through the afternoon. The second drinks very little until dinner and then consumes most of their fluids during the final few hours before bed. Even though the total amount may be similar, the timing can create a very different nighttime experience. For someone bothered by repeated awakenings, moving some fluid intake earlier in the day may be worth considering when medically appropriate. Then, as bedtime approaches, the focus can shift toward avoiding unnecessarily large drinks rather than avoiding all fluids completely. This approach is about balance, not restriction. If you are thirsty, ignoring your body's needs simply because the clock says it is evening may not always be wise. At the same time, drinking several large glasses shortly before lying down may make uninterrupted sleep more difficult for some people. The most helpful approach is often consistency rather than extremes. You can also observe how your body responds to small adjustments instead of changing everything at once. Perhaps you notice that spreading fluids earlier helps. Perhaps you discover that caffeine late in the day affects you more than water. Or perhaps nothing changes at all. That last possibility is important because it may suggest that your nighttime awakenings have another cause. And this leads to the question we need to ask next. What if you improve your drinking pattern, reduce large late evening drinks, and still find yourself waking up 2, 3, or even 4 times every night? At that point, the water bottle may not be the main place to look, SH18, when the problem may not be your water at all. This is where many people make an understandable mistake. They assume that if they wake up at night to urinate, water must automatically be the cause. So they drink less and less, hoping the problem will disappear. But nighttime urination can have several possible causes, and hydration is only one part of the picture. Sometimes the bladder may become more sensitive and send signals more frequently. Sometimes a person wakes because of poor sleep, discomfort, noise, stress, or another sleep-related problem, and then decides to use the bathroom simply because they are already awake. In some cases, medications may influence how much urine the body produces or when that urine is produced. Swelling in the legs can also play a role for certain individuals. During the day, fluid may collect in the lower legs, and when a person lies down at night, some of that fluid can return to circulation and eventually be processed by the kidneys. Men may also experience urinary symptoms related to prostate enlargement, which can affect urine flow and frequency. None of these possibilities mean you should assume the worst. They simply show why persistent nighttime symptoms deserve a broader view. Imagine a patient saying, "Doctor, I stopped drinking water after dinner, but I am still waking up 3 times." At that point, simply telling that person to drink even less may not address what is actually happening. The body may be providing useful information, and the goal is to understand that information rather than silence it through extreme restriction. Your sleep pattern also matters. If you wake repeatedly for reasons unrelated to your bladder, you may naturally notice even a mild urge that you would have slept through otherwise. This creates a cycle where poor sleep and bathroom trips appear connected, even when one did not directly cause the other. That is why paying attention to patterns is so important. Persistent symptoms should be discussed with a qualified healthcare professional, especially when they are affecting sleep or daily life. And while many nighttime bathroom trips are not emergencies, there are certain warning signs that should never simply be dismissed as another unavoidable part of aging. CCL 9. Warning signs that deserve medical attention. If your nighttime bathroom habits suddenly change or become significantly worse, it is worth paying attention. Occasional nighttime urination can happen to many people, especially with age, but persistent or changing symptoms may deserve a conversation with a healthcare professional. Pain or burning when urinating, blood in the urine, fever, or feeling generally unwell should not simply be ignored. Difficulty passing urine or a sudden major change in how often you need to urinate can also be important to discuss. Extreme thirst combined with noticeable changes in urination may require medical evaluation as well. New or worsening swelling, particularly when significant, is another reason to seek professional advice. And even when none of these warning signs are present, repeated nighttime awakenings that leave you exhausted during the day still deserve attention. Sleep is not a luxury. Consistently interrupted sleep can affect mood, concentration, balance, energy, and overall quality of life. The goal is not to panic every time you wake once during the night. The goal is to notice patterns and meaningful changes. Your healthcare professional can consider your symptoms, medications, medical history, sleep, and other factors to help determine what may be contributing. Once important medical concerns have been considered, however, there are also several simple evening habits that may support better sleep and reduce unnecessary interruptions for some people without requiring extreme changes. Section 10, 5 evening habits that may support better sleep and fewer interruptions. Your evening routine can influence sleep, and sometimes several small changes work better than one dramatic solution. Start by avoiding the habit of saving most of your daily fluids for the final hours before bed. If you know you tend to forget to drink during the day, becoming more consistent earlier may be more useful than trying to make up for everything at night. Next, pay attention to caffeine. Some people are more sensitive than others, and caffeine later in the day may affect sleep or increase the feeling of bladder urgency. Another useful step is to look honestly at your evening beverage habits. A large drink with dinner, another while watching television, and another before bed can quickly add up without feeling excessive at the moment. You may not need to eliminate everything, but awareness can help you identify unnecessary patterns. Medication timing is another important consideration. Some medicines can affect urination or fluid balance, but you should never change a prescribed schedule on your own. Instead, ask your healthcare professional whether the timing is appropriate for your individual situation. Sometimes timing can matter, but any adjustment should be medically guided. Finally, remember that supporting sleep itself may also help. Not every nighttime awakening begins with the bladder. If your sleep is frequently disturbed by stress, noise, discomfort, temperature, or inconsistent sleep habits, you may wake more often and become more aware of the urge to urinate. A calm bedtime routine and a comfortable sleeping environment may support better rest. None of these changes guarantee that you will sleep through every night without interruption, but together, they may reduce avoidable triggers. The goal is not perfection. It is improvement through practical observation and sensible adjustments. If one small change helps, you can continue it. If another makes no difference, you can discuss your symptoms further with a professional. And there is one mistake you should be especially careful not to make while trying to improve your nights: becoming so afraid of waking up that you intentionally deprive your body of the fluids it needs. Section 11. The dangerous overcorrection: dehydrating yourself to sleep longer. When repeated nighttime bathroom trips become frustrating, it is understandable that some people begin cutting back on fluids more and more. They may first avoid drinking in the evening, then start drinking less in the afternoon, and eventually find themselves going through most of the day with very little fluid. The hope is simple. Less fluid coming in should mean fewer bathroom trips going out. But the body is more complicated than that. Adequate hydration supports normal body functions, and deliberately restricting fluids too aggressively can create other problems. The answer is usually not to punish your body by refusing to drink. Instead, it is to look for a balanced pattern that fits your individual needs. This is especially important for older adults and for anyone with medical conditions or medications that affect fluid balance. The difference between reducing an unnecessary large drink before bed and spending an entire day dehydrated is enormous. One can be a thoughtful adjustment. The other may create new concerns. If you are unsure how much fluid is appropriate for you, particularly if you have been given medical advice about fluid intake, speak with your healthcare professional. Improvement does not require extreme rules. In many cases, consistency is more useful than restriction. Spread your fluids sensibly, notice your symptoms, and avoid assuming that every nighttime bathroom trip means you drank too much. The next question is how you can discover whether your personal changes are actually helping instead of simply guessing from one unusually good or bad night. Section 12. Try this simple 7-day observation method. One of the easiest ways to understand your own pattern is to observe it for several days. You do not need complicated equipment, expensive tests, or obsessive tracking. Simply pay attention. For about 1 week, make a brief note of when you drink larger amounts of fluids, when you consume caffeine, what time you go to bed, and how many times you wake during the night. You can also ask yourself one important question each time you wake. Did the urge to urinate wake me? Or was I already awake for another reason and then decided to use the bathroom? That small distinction may reveal more than you expect. After several days, look for patterns. Are your worst nights following unusually large evening drinks? Do you wake more after consuming caffeine later in the day? Are there nights when you drink differently but still wake the same number of times? The goal is not to diagnose yourself. it is to gather useful information. A pattern observed over several days is often more meaningful than one unusually bad night. If your symptoms continue or interfere with your quality of life, these observations can also give your healthcare professional a clearer picture of what may be happening. Sometimes the most useful discovery is realizing that the problem does not follow the pattern you expected. Before we finish, let us bring everything together by clearing up the 3 biggest misunderstandings that often cause people to make the wrong changes. SCQN 13. The 3 biggest takeaways most adults, over 60 miss. The first big takeaway is that hydration is not only about quantity. When you drink and how you distribute fluids throughout the day may also influence your nighttime routine. If most of your fluids are consumed late in the evening, moving some of that intake earlier may be worth considering when appropriate for your personal health needs. The second takeaway is even more important. Waking up to urinate is not always caused by drinking water. Sleep problems, bladder changes, medications, urinary symptoms, and other health factors can contribute. So if reducing evening fluids does not solve the problem, drinking even less may not be the answer. And the third takeaway is simple but powerful. The goal is balanced, hydration, not dehydration. Do not trade one possible health concern for another, simply because you want uninterrupted sleep. Observe your patterns, make sensible adjustments, and seek medical advice when symptoms are persistent, changing, or concerning. Once you understand these 3 points, you can stop reacting to every nighttime awakening with guesswork and begin making more informed decisions. That knowledge can help you feel more confident, because instead of blindly following extreme advice, you can pay attention to your own body, identify possible patterns, and understand when a professional evaluation may be appropriate. Sometimes the best solution begins with a small change in awareness rather than a dramatic change in your lifestyle. Section 14. Final recap and strong, reassuring ending. Think back to that familiar nighttime moment. You are finally asleep, then suddenly awake again, wondering whether you will ever get through the night without another trip to the bathroom. If that happens to you, remember that you do not have to automatically accept every repeated interruption as an unavoidable part of getting older. At the same time, you should not assume that water is always the enemy. Look at your overall pattern. Are you drinking very little all day and trying to catch up at night? Are large evening drinks, caffeine, or other beverages contributing? Or are you waking for reasons that may have little to do with your bladder at all? Small, sensible changes may help, but persistent symptoms deserve proper attention. Your goal should be better balance, better understanding, and better sleep, not extreme restriction. If your nighttime bathroom trips are suddenly changing, becoming more frequent, or appearing with other concerning symptoms, speak with a healthcare professional. And if you found this information helpful, share it with someone who also wakes repeatedly at night. Sometimes one simple change in awareness can become the beginning of a healthier routine, a more restful night, and a better understanding of what your body may actually be trying to tell you.